The OCD and Anxiety Podcast by Robert James Coaching. Hello and welcome to the OCD and Anxiety Podcast, where we explore how to have a more positive relationship with anxiety disorders, taking back control so that you can start living the life you choose and not the one chosen by your fears. Hello and welcome to episode 397, where today I'm going to be talking about OCD. Here I am yet another day, and we are talking about OCD. And specifically today, we will be discussing about the importance of kind of making a decision. Sometimes I think we can overcomplicate things when it comes to OCD. I spend so much time talking about it in each of these episodes. And, sometimes actually, if we just cut to the chase, what dealing with OCD really involves is kind of making a decision to do things differently. Now, obviously that isn't easy, but I think sometimes we can overcomplicate things. And today I'll be kind of unpacking that a little bit. If you find the podcast helpful, it would be great if you could follow and like on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Rob James Coaching UK. Also, the podcast is now on YouTube. You can follow there too. And I really hope that you enjoy. If you have any questions, do please let me know. And off we go. As I often do, I'm going to start with a quote today, and this one is by Nelson Mandela. May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. And this is obviously a really nice quote because with OCD, so often our choices are actually because of our fears. They can so often dictate the things that we're doing in our lives. Maybe we're avoiding certain things. Maybe there's something in our life that we really know we should be doing, something that's very important to us, something that, if we were doing it, perhaps we would feel more fulfilled, more content in our life, but we're not quite allowing ourselves to do it. And it's really kind of holding us back. And this is because a lot of the time our fears are making our choices for us. And that can be conscious. You can be really aware of that. And some of the time it can be unconscious. It can be these kind of behavioral loops that are going on in the background where, you're not even aware that you're actually avoiding certain things or not doing things in your life that would actually improve things because of the fears and the anxieties that you have about them, and so a lot of the time with OCD, I think, as I was talking about at the start, I think we can avoid making decisions. We can put our decisions off. And the idea is that, by not making a decision, by not choosing to take, certain action in one direction or another, really what we're doing is we're kind of just delaying the inevitable discomfort and anxiety that comes up when we do make a choice, when we do decide to do one thing or something else. The thing is, though, that actually once we do make that decision and we just deal with the resulting kind of uncertainty that will appear, what tends to happen is you kind of get used to that. You habituate to that discomfort. And actually, you feel a kind of sense of relief because you've made a decision, you've committed to something. And now you can kind of, get on and move on in that direction in your life. And that kind of feels good. So often with OCD, we're doing the opposite of that. We're kind of waiting to feel just right, for example, so that we feel that whatever decision we make, we've made the right decision 100%. And now we can, now that we're feeling good enough, now we can move forward in our lives. And this really kind of keeps us stuck. And I think it really overcomplicates things as well. When we're kind of looking for the perfect answer, the perfect solution, really what we're doing is we're just kind of getting caught up in OCD in another way. OCD is very good. It's very sneaky. It likes to find these different ways to kind of get into us and, get us doing kind of repetitive behaviors and performing those compulsions. And one of those sneaky compulsions can be looking for certainty about making decisions, wanting to have the exact correct answer, or wanting to make the perfect decision. And that perfectionism, as we've talked about quite a lot in the podcast, is something that can really hold you back. If you're willing to actually step forward and step out into your life, despite the fact that you may be a little bit uncertain about things, but you've actually chosen to make a decision and kind of get on despite that uncertainty, well, that's actually going to really support you moving forward in your life. Because when you're willing to allow a little bit of uncertainty, when you're willing to make a decision despite the fact that, maybe you don't have all of the information, because maybe it's almost impossible to get all of the information. Maybe that's just another part of you looking for certainty. And so if instead you're willing to kind of, make a decision and commit to that, obviously not in a reckless way, but in a positive way, it's not that you don't think about things anymore. Of course, you weigh things up and you look at the pros and cons of things, but you don't want to do that too much. When people talk about making decisions, classically in CBT, for example, people might ask you to kind of draw up a list of pros and cons, write down all of the positive things about the decision and all of the negative things. And then you can, choose which one is the best one. If one of them has more positives, then that's the one for you, for example. And unfortunately for people with OCD, this kind of approach can actually make things worse because, as I'm sure you're aware, this can end up just being another kind of compulsion where, you think, well, there's lots of positives here, but actually now I'm feeling like I want to do the opposite thing. And so, and OCD again is really good at kind of doing that, finding different ways for you to kind of get stuck and, and to start overthinking things again. And when we start creating lists in that way, well, you can get stuck in that trap of overthinking and overanalyzing. So a little bit of that may be helpful, but just be wary of doing that kind of thing if you have OCD, because I think it can actually, be a bit of a trap. So, decision making when you have OCD can sometimes be a bit more tricky. We know that can be true. But to be honest, a lot of the time, we're trying to collect too much information. A lot of the time, after you've thought about something, for long enough, you've probably already figured out what you want to do. Really, what's happening is the OCD and the anxiety is maybe blocking you from figuring out kind of what you want to do. But deep down, you probably do know. And actually, when we let go of all of the thinking, the analyzing, the trying to figure it out, looking at it from all the different angles, when we actually just let go and we try to come back into the present, maybe we go off and do something else. We stop thinking about it altogether. We go for a walk. We do mindfulness. We do some meditation. We go and do some other form of exercise. You do some painting, whatever you enjoy doing. And you give yourself some headspace by actually just taking a break from all of that incessant compulsing and thinking about it. Well, sometimes when you do that, you actually begin to kind of get in touch with that inner wisdom a bit more. And you recognize that actually, you could kind of do either thing. You potentially could make, this decision or that decision. And, both of them you could probably make work. And, sometimes I like to think about decisions in that way. I think with OCD, we can put too much pressure on ourselves and say, well, there has to be the right decision. Something that I find to be quite helpful for myself is thinking, there is no right or wrong decision. I will just make whatever decision I choose. I will make it work for me. And that happens to work quite well for me when I do that. It may be different from you and your personal perspective. But I think, when we give ourselves the opportunity to have a break from all of the thinking about it, we get a bit more in touch with our intuition. And that can really help, with that kind of decision-making process. But at some point, you've got to let go and choose something. You can't just, be uncertain well, you can be uncertain, but you can't just allow that decision-making process to go on indefinitely. I've been there myself with relationship OCD, for example, where I spent years agonizing over my relationship that I was in, and it kind of really took away from the quality of my relationships at this time, because I was, I wasn't fully present. I wasn't able to enjoy the relationship as much as I wanted to, because I was always agonizing over this kind of decision as to whether this was the right relationship with me, for me, whether I should perhaps move on and try something else, or whether actually I could be happy in this relationship. And, it was exhausting. And I think, that can happen where we draw out decision-making processes, over many months or even years, because, we don't want to make a decision, because that final decision means that, well, we have to kind of let go and not do the other thing. And as soon as, the idea of like giving up that one thing pops up into your head, it can make you feel frustrated. And you don't quite want to let go of that thing. And so you can remain stuck and kind of go around in circles. And so if that's you, if you struggle with that kind of thing, it's really helpful at some point to kind of have a cutoff where you kind of say to yourself, well, by this point, I have to make the decision. And when you do, it actually feels good. You actually feel right. Okay, now I can refocus on this. I can really commit to this thing, and I'm going to move forward. Of course, though, OCD may well come up after you've made a decision and try to convince you that the decision you've made was the wrong decision, and that now you've missed out on this thing and everything's going to be terrible. Of course, what that is just the OCD looking for another way to get you compulsing again, to start getting you go back to the overthinking, the overanalyzing, and believing that you've made a wrong decision, which is really fertile ground to start obsessing. And so, if you do decide to make a decision, one of the things that you have to do afterwards is be quite determined to not allow yourself to go back down that rabbit hole of second guessing the decision. Of course, if you really feel that you've made a wrong decision, okay, of course, you can go back and correct that decision if you can. But just be wary that a lot of the time with OCD, the second guessing is actually about kind of anxiety coming up, uncertainty as to whether you've made the right decision again, and then wanting to go back to have that certainty. And sometimes when you do go back, perhaps, not always, but perhaps then, the other thing that you've now not chosen, suddenly that seems like the right thing again to choose. And this is, really a really good kind of example of how OCD can kind of get us stuck in that trap of ruminating, because we kind of move from, one thing to another. And the OCD doesn't really care, in a way, which one you choose. It just wants you to remain stuck. It just wants you to keep doing that typical obsessive compulsive behavior, because it just wants to perpetuate itself. It wants you to keep on doing the habit of OCD. And so whenever we try to change that, well, OCD doesn't necessarily like it that much. It might actually kick up a bit of a fuss and try and get you kind of compulsing again. So if that's something that comes up for you with decision making, then that's something that, it's important that you're aware of. So there we go, guys. I think this is an incredibly important area. When it comes to decisions, at the end of the day, it is actually more simple than we often think. Yes, it can be uncomfortable to make a decision. Of course, the OCD will create anxiety for us when we choose to do something and not do something else. But in order for us to kind of really move on from OCD and start kind of, making changes in our lives, unfortunately, we do have to make those decisions. And, the understanding that and having the realization that actually that choice is an amazing thing. The fact that we do actually have a choice means that in the long term, we can learn how to manage our OCD because we don't have to choose to keep on compulsing. We can actually make much more positive choices in our lives. And when we do that, well, things may start to change with the OCD. If we stay stuck in the trap of believing, that there's a perfect decision out there that we can make 100%, and we're going to keep kind of waiting until we figure that out. Well, we may be waiting a long time, and in the process, you're giving OCD the opportunity to kind of really run wild, and kind of take over. And so, learning to make decisions in a timely way and learning how to accept the uncertainty that comes up around that process can be a really helpful and powerful thing. So many thanks, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you have any questions at all about anything I've spoken about today, do please let me know. And I will see you next time. Just a quick reminder that if you want to get a free session, all you need to do to get that is to head over to my website, www.robertjamescoaching.com. And there you can leave me a message and we can arrange the free session. And now just a quick reminder of my disclaimer. Any information that you view on my website, Instagram page, Facebook group, or anywhere else online, or any information that you listen to on the podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for actual medical or mental health advice from a doctor, psychologist, or any other medical or mental health professional.